When a customer walks in and asks me what camera do I need, I stop them because that's actually the last question they should be asking. In this video, I'm going to tell you what the right first question is and why getting it wrong is where most vision projects begin to fail. I'm Raghava Kashyapa, founder of Qualitas Technologies. And at Qualitas, we've deployed over 200 vision systems globally. Now, here's what I've seen happen more times than I'd like to admit. A plant calls us, they've already decided they need a camera system. They've got a vendor shortlist. They've looked at spec sheets. They want help with implementation. But when I ask them, show me a bad part, a real reject, the kind that leaves your plant and ends up in a customer, more often than not, they can't produce one. Not because the defects don't exist, but because nobody stopped to define them properly before the project started. And that, more than any hardware decision, is where vision projects begin to go wrong. The first question in any vision project isn't what camera, it's this: can you show me the defect physically in your hand, and can you describe exactly what makes a reject? That sounds obvious, isn't it? I've sat in rooms with quality engineers who've been running production lines for years, and when I ask them to define a scratch, is a 0.5 millimeter scratch a defect? Is a 2 millimeter one a defect? Does it depend on where it sits on the part? The room goes quiet. Because the truth is, the definition lives in different people's heads. The inspector on the morning shift has a different standard from the inspector in the night shift. The customer's tolerance document says one thing, what actually gets rejected looks very different. And that gap between the written standard and what actually happens on the floor is exactly where vision systems go wrong. The system gets built to a definition that doesn't match reality. Then it starts passing defects or over-rejecting good parts, and everyone blames the technology. So before you pick a camera, you have to close that gap. That's the real first question. The second question I ask is, where on your line does the defect get made? Not where you want to inspect for it, where it actually originates. Because these are almost never the same place. We were on a line recently where the customer wanted a camera positioned right before the packing station. That's the last check before the product goes to the customer. You know, what they call end-of-line inspection. Reasonable thinking, but when I walked backward to the line, I found the defect was being introduced 3 stations earlier at the forming stage. By the time the part reached plant camera position, it had gone through 3 more processes. The defect was still there, but it was much harder to see, buried underneath surface changes from the steps that followed. When we moved the inspection point upstream, same hardware, same software, just a different position on the line, the results went from unreliable to consistent. That's what walking the line before you spec does. It can save you months of debugging without changing a single component. Inside 3. The spec is the engineering work. The third thing I want to say is this: the requirement document, the spec, is not paperwork you write to satisfy a procurement process. Instead, it is the actual engineering work of the project. There's a well-documented case, a vision system that scored 98% accuracy in the vendor's demo environment and then delivered 75% on the production floor. That's a 23-point gap. Here's the source. The gap didn't appear by accident. It was written into differences between the demo conditions and the real ones. Lighting variations between shifts, how the parts are presented, conveyor speed, temperature changes, none of those were captured in the spec. So none of them got solved before the system went live. A good spec isn't a long spec, it's a complete one. And those are very different things. Here at Qualitas, we've built a free tool called the Spec Assistant. It walks you through exactly those questions before you speak to any vendor. Comment spec below and I'll get you on the waitlist. It won't take long and it'll save you a lot of expensive guessing later. Thank you.